The world watched in horror today as Gaza was once again engulfed in a storm of violence. Explosions shook the already battered city. Plumes of smoke rose from the rubble, painting a grim picture against the pale sky. The relentless barrage of airstrikes and the deafening roar of artillery fire echoed the terrifying reality for those trapped in the conflict zone. Today, the streets of Gaza ran red with blood. Families huddled in terror, their homes no longer sanctuaries but potential tombs. The cries of children, their innocence lost amidst the chaos, pierced the smoke-filled air. Every explosion, every gunshot, deepened the wounds of a community already scarred by years of conflict. The relentless fighting continued into the night, casting an eerie glow over the devastated landscape. The stench of death and destruction hung heavy in the air, a grim testament to the human cost of this seemingly endless conflict. As darkness fell, so did the hopes of many, their dreams shattered in the deafening silence that followed each explosion. The human toll of today's violence is staggering. Palestinian officials report a death toll exceeding 150, a grim number that continues to rise with each passing hour. Among the dead are innocent civilians, men, women and children caught in the crossfire of a war they never chose. Hospitals, already overwhelmed by the casualties of weeks of fighting, are now struggling to cope with the sheer number of wounded. Corridors overflow with patients, their faces etched with pain and fear. Doctors and nurses, working tirelessly amidst the chaos, are forced to make unimaginable decisions, prioritizing the lives they can save. The Israeli Defense Forces also reported casualties, with 12 soldiers confirmed dead in today's ground operations. Their loss is a stark reminder that on both sides of this conflict, lives are being tragically cut short, leaving behind families shattered by grief and loss. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza has reached a breaking point. Hospitals lacking essential medical supplies and with limited capacity are struggling to provide even the most basic care. The injured, many with life-threatening wounds, are forced to wait for hours, their chances of survival dwindling with each passing moment. The shortage of medical supplies is dire. Basic necessities like bandages, antibiotics, and anesthesia are running dangerously low. Surgical equipment is scarce, forcing doctors to perform complex procedures with limited resources, often in unsanitary conditions. The wounded are not the only ones suffering. Chronic illnesses are going untreated. Pregnant women are giving birth in perilous conditions. The healthcare system in Gaza, already fragile before the recent escalation, is now on the verge of collapse. Around the world, condemnation of the violence in Gaza is growing. The United Nations has issued an urgent call for an immediate ceasefire, urging all parties to prioritize the protection of civilians. International human rights organizations have denounced the attacks on civilian infrastructure, calling them potential war crimes. Protests have erupted in cities across the globe, with people from all walks of life standing in solidarity with the people of Gaza. They are demanding an end to the bloodshed, urging their leaders to take concrete action to broker a lasting peace. Social media platforms are flooded with messages of support for Gaza, with users sharing harrowing images and videos from the ground, amplifying the voices of those directly affected by the conflict. The hashtag Gaza Under Attack is trending globally, reflecting the widespread concern and outrage over the unfolding humanitarian catastrophe. Section 5, A Timeline of Terror, Charting the Descent into Chaos. The current conflict is the latest chapter in a long and bloody saga. To truly understand the gravity of the situation in Gaza, it is essential to look back at the events that have led to this point. October 7, 2024, Hamas launches a surprise attack on Israel, firing rockets into Israeli territory and breaching the border fence. The attacks result in significant casualties and widespread panic across Israel. October 8, 2024, Israel launches a full-scale military operation in retaliation to the Hamas attacks. Airstrikes target Hamas positions in Gaza, and ground troops are deployed to secure the border. From October 9 to November 14, 2024, the conflict escalates rapidly, with both sides exchanging heavy fire. Civilian casualties mount on both sides, and the humanitarian situation in Gaza deteriorates rapidly. November 15, 2024. Today, the world bears witness to one of the deadliest days since the conflict began. Intense fighting rages across Gaza, resulting in a staggering loss of life and further crippling the already fragile healthcare system. Section 6. The unbearable weight of today's tragedy. The sheer scale of human suffering unfolding in Gaza is difficult to comprehend. Behind the statistics, the casualty figures and the news reports are real people whose lives have been shattered by this senseless conflict. Families torn apart, their homes reduced to rubble, children robbed of their innocence, their laughter silenced by the sounds of war, parents burying their children, their hearts heavy with grief and despair. These are the human stories that lie at the heart of this tragedy. Each life lost represents a world extinguished, a future unwritten. The emotional toll on the people of Gaza is immeasurable. The psychological scars of this conflict will continue to haunt them long after the guns have fallen silent. Section 7. Echoing pleas, the desperate need for intervention. The international community cannot stand idly by as this human tragedy unfolds. The time for empty condemnations and calls for restraint is long past. Decisive action is needed now to stop the bloodshed and alleviate the suffering of innocent civilians. A ceasefire is the most urgent priority. All parties must agree to an immediate cessation of hostilities to allow for the delivery of humanitarian aid and medical supplies to those in desperate need. Beyond a ceasefire, a concerted diplomatic effort is needed to address the root causes of this conflict. This will require all sides to come to the negotiating table in good faith, committed to finding a just and lasting solution that guarantees the security and human rights of both Israelis and Palestinians. Section 8. Beyond the rubble, the long road to healing. Even if a ceasefire is reached tomorrow, the road to recovery for Gaza will be long and arduous. The physical scars of destruction will take years to rebuild. The emotional and psychological wounds inflicted on its people will take even longer to heal. The international community must be prepared to provide long-term support for Gaza's reconstruction and recovery. This will require significant investment in infrastructure, healthcare, education, and economic development. But beyond bricks and mortar, Gaza needs hope. Hope for a future free from violence and oppression. Hope for a life of dignity and self-determination. The international community has a moral obligation to help the people of Gaza realize that hope. Section 9. A glimmer of hope in the darkness. Despite the grim reality on the ground, amidst the rubble and despair, there are glimmers of hope. The international outcry against the violence is growing louder, putting pressure on world leaders to act. Humanitarian organizations and individuals are working tirelessly to provide aid and comfort to those in need. The resilience of the human spirit, particularly among the Palestinians in Gaza, shines through the darkness. Even in the face of unimaginable loss and suffering, their determination to rebuild their lives and strive for a better future remains unbroken. The path to peace will be long and difficult, but it is a path that must be taken. For the sake of the innocent lives lost, for the sake of those who continue to suffer, and for the sake of future generations, we must never give up hope for a just and lasting peace in Gaza.